Welcome to this week's presentation with Dr. Stephen Turner, who is the president of Gesher Galicia. We're glad that you're with us today, and as always, for those of you who are consistently participating in this Jewish Gen Talks series, it's great to have you back. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. We hope that you will continue to participate in the future. Today's talk will be with Dr. Turner, and he's going to highlight the partnership between Gesher Galicia and Jewish Gen, and also take the opportunity to share with you more about the mission of Gesher Galicia and what their current projects are and what they are trying to accomplish. There's a lot of shared goals of what Jewish Gen and Gesher Galicia are trying to accomplish, and we are glad to support each other's work and to partner together, and ultimately to provide more access and information to researchers, to those of you who are looking for family, who are trying to understand what the lives were like of our ancestors who lived in various communities in Galicia. Just a little bit about Dr. Turner. He was already curious about Galicia as a young boy when he spent the holidays davening at a Galicianer shul with his grandparents in Brooklyn, New York, and that is what first motivated him to embark on this journey into genealogy. And he initially tried to prove that his surname had never changed. He's published in a variety of articles in a variety of journals from throughout the world, in Israel, the United States, and other publications. He joined the board of Gesher Galicia in 2017 and assumed the presidency in 2019. Gesher Galicia and Jewish Gen have a long history together, which Dr. Turner will highlight. And just a couple of notes before I turn it over to Dr. Turner. As with previous presentations, this session will be recorded, and we'll post a message on the discussion group when it's available. We're a little bit behind on getting the recordings from the last few presentations, but we're going to really try our best to get them online this week before Passover. Dr. Turner will take questions. You can post them in the chat or in the QA, and we'll try to get to them at the end of this presentation. Please try to keep the questions general in nature so that we can talk about methodologies and how the answers could be applicable for your own research. Without further ado, Dr. Turner, so glad to have you with us, and I will pass it over to you.
Thank you very much, Avrami. It was I'm so happy to be here today, and let me just share my screen so now I could start the presentation. And I appreciate all the people that have come today, and I know with Passover coming up, there's a lot going on that people are busy, and we appreciate you all being here. I'm having a little trouble starting my slideshow here because the top screen isn't leaving. Just hold on one second. Give me a second here.
Are you trying to go into view mode?
No, I'm trying to start the slideshow, but the top screen is not going away, so it's blocking my ability to get into the slideshow.
Can you click on the slideshow option?
Okay, there it goes. There we go.
Okay, that works.
Okay. So thank you again for having me all here, and I appreciate everyone that came to join us. Gesher Galicia is a special interest group, but we are independent. We have our own website, officers, and we do our own research. However, we are part of the Jewish Gen family of 6, and we work closely with them all. Avrami started the I told you a little bit about my bio, and I want to tell you that how I started to get interested in Galicia. I grew up in Cugon Hills, Queens, and my family attended, and I went to Hebrew school at a large conservative synagogue, the Jewish Center of Cugon Hills. However, for the holidays, we would go to my maternal grandparents' house in East New York, Brooklyn, and they would daven at the small Galiciana shul that was founded by my great-grandfather. East New York is a neighborhood that I'm sure many here are familiar with. It was composed nearly entirely of immigrants from Eastern Europe, many of them having moved up from the slums of the Lower East Side. By all right, I should have preferred going to my home temple in Queens. They had a prominent rabbi, famous cantors, and all my friends were there. The Berriman Street Shul, as it was called, did not have a rabbi, and they would hire a Baal Tefillah for the holidays. A Baal Tefillah is a man who is by no means a professional cantor, but he has a good voice and he knows how to lead the services. All the public speaking in the shul was in Yiddish, a language I did not understand very well. But why did I, my sister, and my cousins enjoy it so much? I look back years later, and I think it's because of the authenticity of the services and the people there. I wrote about this for my blog for the Times of Israel entitled, Where Have You Gone, Berriman Street? In the Berriman Street Shul, the congregation prayed with a fervor and a fear of God I had never seen in the Jewish Center of Cugon Hills. When Shema Koleni, as in the Berriman Street accented Galician Hebrew, came around, the elder refugees and survivors were praying for God not to forsake them in their old age. Tears from the women's gallery and the trembling of the men greatly affected me as a young boy. This is a map of Galicia from 1914. We all know that the borders were constantly changing. So there is a representation of the borders. So this is a representation of the borders right before World War I, which we know of as the war that brought an end to Galicia. I like this map because it shows the names of many of the towns in Städtlach that we were all familiar with. This is a map of current day Europe with Galicia superimposed in green. We could see that it occupied the southeast corner of Poland and the western edge of Ukraine. If you want to learn about the history of Galicia, then we are the place for you to be. Our quarterly journal, the Galiciana, is an award-winning journal. We welcome submissions from our members, academics, historians, and anybody with something important to say. Now, we have strategic partnerships also. I want to speak about the one we have with Gretz College. Gretz College is located in Pennsylvania. Gratz is the oldest independent college for Jewish studies in North America. Gratz runs cultural programs and has a wide offerings of adult education courses. Gesher Galicia members receive a 25% discount for the classes. So many of our members are taking advantage of this excellent opportunity to take wonderful classes. Our vice president and head of education, Andrew Zalewski, is teaching a new course called The Path to Modernity. If anybody here has had the opportunity to listen to Andrew speak about Galicia, you know what a privilege that is. Gesher Galicia, of course, is a research institution. Well, excuse me. First, I want to show you the current issue of the Galiciana that just came out last week. It is edited by Jody Benjamin, supervised by Andrew Galicia. There's a tutorial on how to access cadastral maps and to understand them by our map guru, Jay Osborne, and a great tutorial on World War I military records by our newest board member, Christina Hilsenrath. I have a column in every issue of the journal, and I wrote this month about how COVID affects genealogy and Gesher Galicia. Now, here's a list of our current research projects that we're undertaking. And I want to speak to you a little bit today about the Chemical Index project. The Chemical ID project, which started in late 2019 and will probably finish up this May. And it's a wonderful, wonderful project. And let me tell you why. The Chemical Archive had these index books which were unidentified. Our research director, Tony Kahani, in consultation with the archive, made an arrangement where they provided us with the scans of these books, and we sought out volunteers to identify them. As an index book, it is not a book of records, but rather, like its title says, it's a book of indices that lists birth, marriage, or death indexes, the person's name, the year, and where in the record book the actual record is located. I want to give you an example of why these books are so important. We all know that many records did not survive to the modern day. Now, some of these books list indices of records we or other places have already digitized, but also some of the books have indices to many records that did not survive. Thus, it is the only place to get any information on what might be on those missing records. Let me give you an example of how finding a vital record is not just a matter of finding a record and adding a name to your tree wherever you may keep it. Many times these records can be altering in how you feel about ourselves or other members of your family. My father was born in Nadvorna, now Nadvina in Ukraine, which was a small shtetl in the Stanislav district of Galicia. Before I joined the board of Gesher Galicia, I started a Nadvorna shtetl research group. Clara Subar is a survivor and a member of Gesher Galicia and my Nadvorna group. She was born in Nadvorna, then was a hidden child during the war. While she was out in the street one playing, the Gestapo came into the town, and one of the mothers said to a Gestapo officer, pointing at Chaya, "That's a Jewish girl. She's Jewish." Chaya froze and did not say a word. She was put up against the wall, and they were preparing to shoot her. The woman she was placed with came out running and screaming at the Gestapo officer, "What are you doing? She's not Jewish. She's my daughter." The officer did not shoot, and she was saved. Her mother survived the camps, and after the war came back to reclaim her, but the woman did not want to give her up. There was a big court case that her mother won, and Chaya was reunited with her mother, and they eventually made their way to Israel. Now, when the Nadvorna index book was identified and uploaded to the Gesher Galicia website, I informed the Nadvorna group, most of whom are members of Gesher Galicia, and the next day I received this email from Chaya's son, Yossi. I can't write the whole group yet because I haven't told my mother, but the listing of her birth that she has been seeking all her adult life is in the Nadvorna index book you posted to the Nadvorna study group about this morning. You have no idea how thrilled she will be. Shortly later, I got this email from Chaya. "Steve, miracle of miracles. Today, due to the records you posted recently at births, my son Yossi found my name listed in the year I was born. I never had a birth certificate." She used to say that the Nazis stole her birth certificate. "But now I know what year I was born. I did not expect to ever find this treasure. Thanks to your diligence in the work you do for Galicia Nadvorna Society, I now own this treasure. To say thank you doesn't begin to cover my appreciation. May you continue to go from strength to strength in all your efforts." How touching to receive something like that, really. Now, Chaya later explained to me why this was so important to her, her mother told her she was born in 1940, while others said 1939. Yossi and Chaya traveled to Poland and Ukraine to search through the archives, looking for her birth record, to no avail. The Nadverner birth records for 1939 and 1940 were nowhere to be found in any archive. Apparently, they did not survive the war. Why did she want to know so badly? Her father, after the invasion of Poland in 1939, joined the Polish army and went off to war. He was never seen again, other than when he came back to Nadvorna to hide her mother. If she was born in 1939, that meant that when he was there when her father briefly returned to Nadvorna, they had met. Now, here is the page in the Nadverna Index book. Here is Chaya's record, blocked out here. Her name was Clara. You could see that she was born in 1939, and in the birth record book, this record is on page 17. It's record 26. Now look at this page and look how beautiful and legible the handwritings were. Not all books are like this, but many are. I have to tell you that when members of the Nadverna group went to look at this book, they were thrilled to learn of records and information that they were looking for a long time, but were never able to find. I have to urge all of you to look through these books. For this, though, you must be a member of Gesher Galicia. But this is just an impact of some of the work that we do has on people's lives. Here's some pictures of Chaya. The first is a picture of her just after the war in 1945. She was hidden at that point. The picture on the right is Chaya and her mother in late 1946 or early 1947. It was taken at a train station, and Chaya does not yet know that she is with her mother. They didn't tell her, only that this was a kind woman who had came to take her away for a 2-week vacation. That's what they told her. This is just an example of the impact that some of the work we do has on people's lives. And this is why we work, Avrami with Jewish Gen and us at Gesher Galicia work so hard and volunteer our services to do this work. Now, here's a list of some inventories that we have on our website. It's not complete, but it's just there to give you an idea of what's available. Now, I don't want to leave the impression that Gesher Galicia is the only place to go to for Jewish Galician records. JRI Poland is a magnificent site with many records from all of Poland and Galicia. Jewish Gen, of course, we know is a fabulous site, and Miriam Wiener's Roots to Roots Foundation is a great place to go if you want to know where a certain record is located. Okay, I want to talk now about some of the ways that Jewish Gen and Gesher Galicia cooperate. One of those ways is the API that we have between our websites. An API is an application program interface. What that means is that if you search a particular person on one website, you will receive a link to records for that person on the other site, if any exist. Here's how it works. This is the entry page to search the Gesher Galicia databases. Here I'm doing a search for my great uncle Menashe Sher, and he's from Nadverna. Now you could see there are other parameters you could enter, but for the purpose of this record, this is all I needed to do. Now the search of the Gesher Galicia databases returned this record for Menashe Sher, who I knew as my Uncle Max, and his wife Sarah. This is a Landsmannschaft record. But look down here. They also tell you that there are results for Menashe on Jewish Gen. And not only that, but there's also a result in the Jewish Gen burial registry. So now let's go look and click into these links. This is the burial registry that Nolan Altman does a great job with. Here is a picture of the tombstone of my Uncle Max. Okay, and there's genealogy information on this record. Okay, there's the year of his birth, the year of his death. Okay, his wife's name, his father's name, his mother's name, some comments, and the cemetery that he was born. Any of you out there that does not use this registry is really missing something in your research, and I advise all of you to pay attention to it. Then let's see what records there are in Jewish Gen for Menashe. Now, there are tons for Menashe shares, but what about my Menashe share? Okay, now I know there's a whole bunch of Jewish Gen Family Finder records. Now Menashe and Cher, they're both common names, and I did it phonetically, so there are a lot of records there. Excuse me. So I knew a little bit about Menashe. I knew he wasn't a Litvak, so I don't have to look there. I knew he came to the United States before the war, so I don't have to look at these Holocaust records. But in JRI Poland, there are records. And oops, I'm sorry, it's very sensitive. And I know that since he was from Nadvorna, that he was from the Stanislav district, which was cut off from the bottom of the screenshot. But if I didn't know all that, you'd have to look through all these places. But here's the point. You put a record, the search in for a record in Gesher Galicia, and you get all these results from Jewish Gen. Now let's see how it works the other way around. I put in a search to search for Turners from Nadverna. And right away, I'm told that there are 7 records on JRI Poland from the Stanislav district. Now, I just know those are my family. Now, in Gesher Galicia, there are 4 records for Turners from Nadverna. I could click on those links, get right to the record. I want to tell you that if you tried to use this before, there was a glitch and there was a warning that the Gesher Galicia website was not safe. This has all been fixed, and this API works perfectly now. Now, Gesher Galicia, both Gesher Galicia and Jewish Gen have family finders. Obviously, Gesher Galicia is just for towns in Galicia, while Jewish Gens is for towns in a much wider area. If you have ancestry from Galicia, we recommend that you add the names you are researching to both databases for as wide an exposure as possible. I myself broke down a huge brick wall on my own tree as someone found me on the Jewish Gen Family Finder page for Roatine. I spoke about this in a webinar I made for Gesher Galicia, and God willing, if we have an in-person conference in Philadelphia this summer, I will present about this in the conference. Like I said, and here's a picture of the town page on the Gesher Galicia website. And here, down here, is the start of the Family Finder. Now, I cut off the names for privacy reasons, so I didn't want to post them here, but that's what you would see. You would go to the town page for the town you want and look for Family Finder entries. If you scroll down on that page, you see some email addresses of people who posted names for you to contact them. But you also see here that there is a note that Jewish Gen Family Finder also has a Nadverna page with a link to it. That's just another way that Jewish Gen and Gesher Galicia cooperate. And like I said, the more places you look, the better off you are, because you don't know what you will find or who will find you. Now, Gesher Galicia puts 90% of our records up on our website for free for the community. We do have a membership to our organization, and it's only $36 a year. You can purchase a multi-year membership and get discounts. That membership entitles you to access to the members portal. This is the homepage of the members portal. You'll see the Family Finder, which is a member privileges. We have archival records that you could look at, a library. We have back issues of the Galiciana, the Shemishal ID project, which is a member benefit. We have some articles about the Gesher Galicia symposium we had at the archive in Warsaw, and we have a page on webinars. And if you click on the webinar page, this is what you see. Now, with over 1,600 members all over the world, it is very difficult to find a time convenient for all to have an interactive webinar. Therefore, these presentations are recorded for a member to view at their convenience. If you have tested your DNA, you know that as an Ashkenazi Jew, you have literally thousands and thousands of DNA cousins because of endogamy. How does one make sense of all of this? Here, Jennifer Mendelson, someone I know that many of you know to be one of the leading experts in the subject, gives a talk on how to approach this problem. This presentation is awesome, and if you have any interest in the subject, you will not want to miss it. Rabbi Jeremy Borovitz is a young man from Brooklyn who was a Peace Corps volunteer in Ukraine, who is now a rabbi in Berlin. And I interviewed him here on what it was like for a Jew to be living in the lands of Galicia in Ukraine and about his life in Berlin. The well-known photographer, Chuck Fishman, recorded a presentation for us on his photographs of Jewish life in communist Poland. And then when he returned there after the fall of communism in the last decade. If you are a student of history and the world wars, you will not want to miss this interview I did with the distinguished professor of history and well-known author, Omer Bartov. Omer's mother was born in Buchach, Galicia, and he has studied the shtetl and Galicia intently. He wrote the book Erased, about how the Jewish story has been erased today in many parts of Ukraine. He also has written extensively about the world wars and the Holocaust there. The interview is broken down into two parts. The first on Erased and World War I, and the second on World War II and the Shoah. We have a virtual tour of the Galicia Jewish Museum in Krakow, given by the director and the curator. Jennifer Mendelson made another presentation for us, how to approach genealogy research by thinking like a reporter. I mentioned earlier about breaking down a brick wall on my tree using Family Finder, and here I spoke about how that occurred, in addition to how I used DNA to break down a different wall. Andrew Zalewski has recorded 4 presentations for us. The first explaining the changing borders of Galicia, another one on using different maps of cities, towns, and neighborhoods, one on the Jewish Medical Students of Galicia project that he supervises, and finally, one using cadastral surveys that we have on our database. If you have ever taken a heritage trip to the area, or plan to when we can travel again, you will want to see this webinar on the 2018 trip I took with other descendants of Nadworny after the Warsaw IHHES meeting. It was an experience of a lifetime for all of us, and I show those travels here. I will talk more on that later. We at Gesher Galicia are very proud of our map room. It is run by our map guru, Jay Osborne, who does an excellent job stitching together the cadastral maps. It is a meticulous process, and Jay is an expert at it. Here is an example of a cadastral map of a town. We are currently working on interactive maps that we hope to have live soon. And I want to say that Racheli Kreisberg, who I know is also on this webinar, also has done great work making these types of interactive maps. Now, with an interactive map, if you scroll your mouse over a house number, you will see all the vital records associated with that house. This is an amazing tool. Now, why is that so important? First of all, you could track to see how a family moved around the town. You can see who else lived in the house, because we know that many families often lived in one dwelling. You can see who the neighbors were, because we also know that many families lived close to each other. You can see how close the house was to points of interest like the town square, the Rinnick, or the synagogue. When looking at vital records with house numbers, don't assume that because two house were numbers are close to each other, that means the houses themselves were close to each other. You can see, if you see like house 76 here, house 77 could be in a completely different part of town. So you need to take that in mind when you think of house numbers. Also, if you ever want to travel to any of these towns, you need to study and have a map available for you to get the most out of your trip. Now, Jewish Gen has great discussion groups, and they have a new platform for their discussion group. If you have not used it yet, I highly recommend that you do. You no longer have to have your post in plain text modes. You can attach pictures and incorporate links to your posts. Gesher Galicia will soon be migrating our discussion group to this platform. If you care about Galicia, of course, be a subscriber to their main group, but also subscribe to the Gesher Galicia discussion group. And this is the link on how to subscribe to there. The preservation of Jewish culture and heritage in our former lands is something that's very important to me, to Gesher Galicia, and Jewish Gen. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a little drink. I had the great pleasure in 2018 to spend a Shabbat with the Jewish community of Stanislav, now Ivano-Frankivsk. I use the Yiddish name of the town, Stanislav, when I talk, but it was Stanislavov in the interwar period in Poland, and now it's Ivano-Frankivsk. There is a small community in a building given back to them after the fall of communism. They are led by a wonderful rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Kolesnik. The building is not in good shape. Last spring, heavy rains and a leaky roof brought much damage to it. In my personal capacity, I helped raise some money for emergency repairs that allowed the community continue to have services. I am currently, again, in my personal capacity, involved in a project trying to do a complete renovation of the building. This is Rabbi Kolesnik and myself in front of the Ohels in the Nadverna Jewish Cemetery. Rabbi Kolesnik is responsible for all the Jewish cemeteries and mass grave sites for the entire Ivano-Frankivsk district, which we know was one of the most densely populated areas of Jews in the entirety of Galicia. My father, who I said was born in Nadverna, spent much of his youth in Vienna. He used to tell me that Stanislav had this famous Wunder Rebbe, they would call him, who used to come often to Vienna. And when he did, all the Galicianas would pack the shul where he was davening to listen to him preach and to get a blessing. Well, let me tell you, there is a Wunder Rebbe in Stanislav today. Rabbi Kolesnik is a wonderful, wonderful man who works tirelessly in service of Jewish interests in the area. He has many genealogical records in his office. We at Gesher Galicia are interested in examining those records, and we asked him for an inventory of them. When we asked him for an inventory of them, he pointed to his head saying, "This is where the inventory is." We will have to wait for the end of the pandemic to do that examination. Whoops. Okay. Now, this is some of the men of our group in the Ivano-Frankivsk Shul, the Temple Synagogue, before Kabbalah Shabbos Friday evening services. And here are the women from our group in the women's section. And let me tell you, those women are standing. You could see Lily here, who I know is on this webinar. Some of the smaller women couldn't even see past the wall. They had to be on their tiptoes. If they sat down, they were staring at the wall. These were not a bunch of happy American and Israeli women have to be sitting in that section. That's the way the section is today. I don't know how it was back in the day, but we all know our Galician grandmothers as very strong-willed women. It's very hard to imagine that they were very happy with this section. From Ivano-Frankivsk, on Sunday, we traveled to Nadverna. Here's a picture of us on the steps of City Hall. Right here is the mayor of Nadverna. There were many photographers, both video and still, and newspaper reporters. This was big news. The town got all excited over our visit, and they were all decked out for us. The Jews are coming, the Jews are coming, but only for a day. This is Leslie Nolan over here. She is a Peace Corps volunteer from Connecticut who lived in Nadverna for 2 years and who worked with us to plan this day. She also organized a group of young boys and girls that you could see in these pictures from the town to clean the Jewish cemetery for us to be able to walk through it. This is a drone shot of the Nadverna Jewish cemetery. And as you can see, it is not in very good condition. These two buildings over here are the ohels to the great rabbis of the Nadverna Hasidic dynasty. And the Nadverna Hasidim, they still visit and they take frequent pilgrimages to pray at the ohels of their rabbis. The rest of the cemetery, however, is in horrible shape. You could see them zevot strewn all over the place, overgrowth of the plumage. And our Nadverna group worked together with the ESJF, and we have now fenced in the cemetery, but there's still a lot of work to be done. We want to fix all this up, and it's a lot of work to maintain, but unfortunately, the pandemic has put a halt to a lot of our work. And unfortunately, the condition of this cemetery is very typical of Jewish cemeteries in the current lands, and if they still exist to this day. Nadverna at one point in time was over half Jewish. Now there are no Jews left, and the only evidence that there ever was a Jewish community there is the Jewish cemetery. Nowhere in town is there any memorial or acknowledgement to the existence of its former Jewish community. Now there is. Our Nadverna group built this memorial to the victims of the Shoah from Nadverna, and we dedicated it during this trip. This is the plaque that we had inscribed in 4 languages: Hebrew, Yiddish, English, and Ukrainian. It reads, "In eternal memory of our ancestors murdered by Nazi Germans and their collaborators in Nadverna in the years 1941 to 1942. May their memory be blessed." Now there's a story behind this plaque. First off, we are a group of over 100 people. Do you think it's easy to get a group of 100 Jews to agree on what should be written? Then, when we finally got the words agreed to, Leslie, our Peace Corps volunteer, went to the Mason to have it inscribed, and somehow the Ukrainian translation made them think that it said the Jews were murdered by collaborators in Nadverna. They refused to make the plaque. We sought help, we fixed the translation, and the plaque was finally constructed. Now, during the dedication, each family stood before the memorial and gave a testimony to their family's story during the Shoah. Lily, who's here with us today, had a fascinating story to tell. She was there with her son and her niece. It was so touching. This ceremony was recorded and is available on YouTube. Just search Not Werner Statel on YouTube and you will find it. This was a very emotional experience for all of us, the townspeople included. The people there had no idea what happened to the Jews of Nadvorna. The kids are not taught about it in school, and the library has no books on it for them to read. Lily's niece, Amy, put together a group and we sent books for them to the library. They want to know, but if nobody tells them about it, they will not know. At the IAJGS in Cleveland, Avrami and I spoke about a joint sponsorship of Jewish Gen and Gesher Galicia of a group of college students to go to these lands for an educational and heritage inspiring experience. It is not only important to educate the townspeople of what happened in their cities, but we feel it's also important to instill in our young people this history and heritage of the Jewish people in these lands. And Gesher Galicia and Jewish Gen will work together to get that done. Obviously, this could not be done last year because of the pandemic, and this year, I believe, is also going to be difficult, but let's pray, God willing, that in 2022, we can do this. I want to finish this talk talking about the book East-West Street by Philippe Sands, the noted author and attorney. Mr. Sands is writing an article for the next issue of the Galiciana, and in the summer, he will be interviewed for a webinar by Andrew Zalewski. East-West Street looks at the personal and intellectual evolution of two men, Raphael Lemkin and Hersch Lauterpacht, who simultaneously originated the ideas and the terms of genocide and crimes against humanity, both of whom, not knowing the other, studied at the same university with the same professors in Lemberg, now called Lviv. The author writes of a third man, Hans Frank, Hitler's personal attorney, a Nazi from the earliest days, who was appointed Governor General of occupied Poland. On August 1st, 1942, after the Germans captured Lemberg, there was a great celebration in the Opera House. Frank told the audience of party leaders that Hitler's anti-Semitism was justified, that Galicia was the primeval source of the Jewish world. Control of Lemberg and its environs allowed him to deal with the core of the Jewish problem. We appreciate what the Fuhrer has given us with his gift of the District of Galicia. And I'm not talking here about its Jews. Yes, we will have some of them around, but we will take care of that. Now, what does primeval mean? This is the dictionary definition of primeval, which means that of or resembling the earliest ages in the history. Now we know the Nazis were wrong. Sephardim and the Mizrahim have their own history. Ashkenazi Judaism did not start in Galicia, but the culture of Judaism that Frank and the other Nazis were familiar with did. Throughout Eastern, Central, and Western Europe, many of the Gentile population looked at Jewish culture as deriving from Galicia. As Frank was speaking, the Jewish population of Lombok was being quarantined into a ghetto just blocks away from the opera house prior to being exterminated. Because they thought they were striking at the primeval source was why the Nazis were so brutal in Galicia. They thought the way to wipe out the Jews was at this primeval source. We here today are proof that we won and they lost. We at Gesher Galicia and Jewish Gen are here to show that Galician culture is alive. The entirety of Jewish culture is alive, and we promote it and we educate about it. Be a proud Galiciana, or be proud of whatever region your ancestors came from. Support our great organizations. Travel to your ancestral homelands if possible. They gave us this great heritage of ours. We have much to be thankful for to our ancestors. Let's ensure it is not lost and continues to thrive. Thank you very much. And as they used to say in Galicia, Agit Yontiv and Azisen Pesach.
Dr. Turner, thank you very, very much for that very informative presentation. We have a few minutes to take some questions. I just want to share my screen for a second and just show some screenshots on the Jewish Gen side of things that would be of interest. First, as you mentioned, please support the work of Gesher Galicia. It's very important. You can visit their website at JewishGen.org, and you can learn more. That is the link that Dr. Turner just mentioned, GesherGalicia.org/membership. Just a couple of things that I just want to reiterate or reemphasize. On Jewish Gen, if you go to databases and Town Finder, you could search for a town as Ned Vorna, and you could find information on the town and also information that is cross-referenced throughout the Jewish Gen site. So you would be able to find, as Dr. Turner mentioned, the number of people who have a match on the Family Finder, expressed interest in this town, the Yisker book links, Kehila links, as Dr. Turner mentioned, where this was at different time periods. You can find nearby Jewish communities, so you could work your way backwards if you're trying to find information. And then finally, on the bottom of the page, we'll link to offsite resources. So for example, the first link would be for Gesher Galicia. And as we spoke about the Family Finder information, you'd be able to search specifically by town. And on the right-hand side, you could see when people last logged in. So Ada Green last logged in this month. You could go down to see how active people have been or not. I just want to point out that we have a section on the site called Kehila links, which are the equivalent of virtual memorial books. We have a town. We have an entry for Dr. Turner's town. It's worthwhile looking throughout the Kehila link sites for towns of interest in Galicia. And finally, when you search for the Yisker books, we have a number of projects that have been completed that you can read the Yisker books in English. And what I want to point out to you is that we have just updated the page of how you can search for a Yisker book. So if you go to research and you click on Yisker books and you click on read translations, you can now filter results by a number of different options. You can search by a country, you can search by whether or not the book has been completed, and you can search whether or not the book is actually in print. And then you can actually search for a book. You could type in the first few letters of a name if you're not sure how it's spelled. So for example, I have family in Galicia from a place called Balachav. If I would type in the name Balachav and I type in BOLE, I'll pop up with 3 results. And you see the top result looks like the one that would be of interest to me. And if I click on the link, it would take me directly to that page. So it's very powerful. You can sort it by community. So if I would type in Nadvorna, I would see we have one. If I would type in NADV, I see they have three. So there's a lot of different ways that you can filter these results, and I encourage you to go click on research and click on Yisker books, or the direct link is JewishGen.org/Yisker. So with that, we can take a few questions. Let's
I
see
want to
what
say that I saw that someone asked for an email address for Gesher Galicia. If someone has any questions or anything, they could write to info@GesherGalicia.org, or I'm happy to get emails myself at ssturner@GesherGalicia.org.
Okay, so we have a few questions. Okay, can you say more about when interactive maps will be made available?
Okay, well, we at Gesher Galicia are currently redoing all our IT, and we need to make our IT capable of handling these interactive maps. Hopefully, in the next few months, that'll be done.
Will we be seeing more Western Galician records on the member portal in the future?
There's a problem with Western Galician member records, and I have that problem with my own research because my maternal grandmother was from Shendeshev, now called Sedzierzo Malopolski. And most of those records were destroyed. That's where I was saying where about a lot of records didn't survive. On Kahila Links, Susanna Block has a Kolbashov section research group, and there's basically no records for any of these areas. So we're looking. If we find something, we'll put it up. But we can't put up records that don't exist.
Can you, there's a bunch of questions. Just can you define again the cadastral maps, what people can learn from looking through them?
Okay, cadastral maps are maps that were based on surveys, and houses were given numbers in no relation to a street address or anything. And many of the vital records, a birth record or death record, when they registered the record, they would give a house number of where that family lived. And by tracing these house numbers, you could see relationships to families that might not have the same name. So that's a really vital interest, and you could see neighbors of who lived with whom, and that's what you could see from the cadastral maps.
A couple of questions. First of all, for the discussion group, when it's live, we're going to migrate over, as Dr. Turner mentioned, we're going to migrate over to our new platform. We'll send out emails about it, and we will send out notifications in all the various social media channels. But if you haven't registered for the JewishGen discussion group already, you could go to groups.JewishGen.org, or on the homepage, you can click on Connect. And then when the Gesher Galicia group is set up, you'll be able to access it from there as well. And we're hoping to do that in short order. I hope after Pesach, after Passover.
Yes.
Dr. Turner, how many volunteers do you have throughout the organization?
How many? Oh, we have a board of, I think it's about 10. Don't hold me to that number. And we have people who work with us on different projects. But anyone wishing to volunteer, please contact us. And we're always looking for volunteers, but we have people who volunteer, help us with our IT. We have people that help us with membership, with like Jay Osborne is a volunteer that helps us with maps. We have lots of different areas that we have volunteers for, and we could always use more.
Okay. All right, I think we've gone through. I'm just looking in the chat.
Warsaw is not in Galicia. I just saw that pop up. Warsaw was in Congress, Poland, part of the Russian Empire.
Is there an overlap between Bukovina and Galicia? Where should people search?
Well, Bukovina was part of Galicia at one point and was a separate province at another point. We have some records on Bukovina, but there is a great website run by David Wallach called the Jewish Galicia and Bukovina. And you could just Google it to get the exact address of it. And it's a great website. I use a lot of that myself.
Okay, there's a reminder that there is a Jewish genealogy conference that takes place every year in the summer. It's hosted by the IAJGS, which is the International Association of Jewish Genealogical Societies. You can visit their website, iajgs.org. Gesher Galicia will have a strong presence. There will be presentations on your work and further details about the various projects. So I encourage everybody to visit the IAJGS website and sign up for this summer's conference.
Yes, I'll be there. I'm looking forward to, hopefully, God willing, we'll be able to have an in-person conference. If not, we'll have a virtual conference, which worked out pretty well last year.
Yes,
I just want to add that I see that many people are asking about different towns. Is this town in Galicia? Was that town in Galicia? Go to the Gesher Galicia website, www.geshergalicia.org. Look at the town pages and look up the town and see if it was in Galicia. If it was in Galicia, you will see it there. If you don't see it there, that means it wasn't.
Okay. I think we've gone through most of the questions that are not specific. Thank you again, Dr. Turner, for.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. I see there's just a couple of questions about the recording. This is being recorded. We're going to try to make the recording available, I hope this week, but if not, shortly after the holiday. And we were behind on getting the recordings up from the last few programs, so we're going to try to work on that. Our next presentation in the Jewish Gen Talks series will take place on April 13th with Dr. Sally Ann Sack. Some of you know her from Avotenu, one of the early people to establish Jewish genealogy as we know it. She's going to be talking about what Jewish genealogists need to know about Jewish given names. You can already register by going to JewishGen.org/live. And then after the holiday, we'll be announcing further presentations. We have something on Sephardic research and what we'll have going through the summer. Once again, thank you very, very much, Dr. Turner, for joining us. Thank you, everyone,
thank you,
for spending time with us.
And I thank you. I thank everyone who came. And if we didn't answer any of your questions, like I said, write me at ssturner@geshergalicia.org. If you have any specific research questions, write at info@geshergalicia.org. If you have any membership questions, write at membership@geshergalicia.org. We're here to help the community, and we want to help. And Avrami, you're doing a wonderful job with Jewish Gen, and just thank you so much. And we wish to Avrami and his family and everyone else here a real good Yontif, Chag Sameach, Azizin, and Kosher Pesach.
Thank you. The same to you, to everybody. A Chag Sameach, a happy Passover, and we wish you all the best. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great day, everyone.